Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Chalet Garden Coach Garden Questions program. We're going to wait a few moments to let everybody sign on in case there's any technical difficulties. There's a reason I'm in horticulture. I am not super technical, and so I've got helpers to help me with the technology today. We're going to just proceed kind of slowly. If you've got questions, feel free to type them in and ask them, and I'll be glad to address them. Yes, Jennifer is okay. Yes, there's no problem there. They've graciously asked me to help with this program today. So there's no worries with anything there. Jennifer, in fact, is at the store today. So if you wanted to go and visit her in person, she's there. We'll just wait a few more moments. I did get some questions in advance, so we will start with a couple of those questions, and then we will move on to your live questions. So again, if you have questions and you want to send them along, I'm glad to answer them as they come on. I also have a bad habit of when I'm doing a Zoom, I look at myself as I'm talking, so I don't make eye contact with the camera. I apologize in advance for that. Yep, I'm going to do a brief introduction in just a minute or so. My name is Kevin Collins. Thank you. I'm excited to do this. I have not done one of these for Chalet. I have done a couple programs at the Education Center. So this is exciting for me and hopefully exciting for you too. It's an interesting question. I don't know if I actually don't know the answer to this because I'm not super technological. I don't know if everybody can see the question, so I'll repeat this one. What remedy for keeping chipmunks out of the bird feeder? That's actually always a tricky one because chipmunks are kind of domesticated is a strong word, but they've acclimated to an environment that there are people. And so there's not a lot that will scare them off, especially when free food is involved. I am not a whiz at bird feeders and wildlife feed. So I'll give you some things that I've heard, but the primary thing is trying to disrupt their habitat. If the population is high and they're hungry, they're going to go for that food. So trying to keep them out by using preventatives in the garden to dissuade them from living in the area is probably part of the solution. I've heard that if you use baffles on the poles, that will keep them out. But if they're ground feeding, there's really nothing you can do to stop that ground feeding from occurring, other than cleaning up the feed as quickly as you can. I've heard that there's hot peppers and there's a couple other mixes you can mix into the feed as well. And I think those are kind of effective, but again, depends on how hungry the chipmunk is and the population. If there's a lot of pressure for wildlife to feed because there's nothing to eat in the area, they'll eat just about anything, even if it's really unpalatable or unappealing to them. They'll go for it as opposed to starving. So sorry, I don't have a solid answer for you on that, but hopefully I give you some pointers to things to try. All right, we're going to go ahead. I'm going to introduce myself. I've already started talking a little bit. I appreciate it. Hopefully everybody who's going to join us is joining us. My name is Kevin Collins. I am the hardy plant buyer for Chalet Nursery. I buy the trees, shrubs, perennials, vines for you to enjoy at your garden, or if you're having a landscape department come and install, I'm finding those plants for those customers as well. My background is horticulture. I'm a giant plant nerd. I love some plants. I'm originally from Michigan, from the Metro Detroit area. I've worked for a couple top 100 garden centers in the country, and I'm honored to be here at Chalet. This is my beginning, this is the end of my 4th year, and so I've been here a very long time, but I've been stalking Chalet for a number of years. I was very impressed by their education program, and I've been following Chalet for a number of years. So I'm glad to be here with you today. I've been in the horticulture business since 1989, so I've been doing this for a little bit. I am, as I like to say, Chalet's 3rd favorite horticulturist. I know you all love Tony and Jennifer, and I'm glad that they've let me have the opportunity to be with you today. Maybe you'll see some more of me in the future. I'm glad to do it whenever I can fill in and help out. So. Before we get onto those few questions that I've already gotten, I'd like to remind you, if you do have questions, please feel free to ask them. I'm glad to try to answer them at the end of the program. We'll go for about an hour, or as long as we've got questions. So I'm glad to do this. I wanted to point out behind us, it's Salvia time of the year. It's one of the premier perennials for our gardens. It's an easy grower, and there's a lot of versatility. Hardy Salvia or meadow sage is best in full sun, good in part sun, and it's a good rebloomer. It's mostly in the purple and blue range, but there's a lot of variety out there. So I brought some samples over my shoulder that I will talk a little bit about, and you'll see them at the store. We're bringing them in by the literally hundreds this time of year. So over my shoulder, all the way to the left, is a proven winter introduction called Pink Dawn. It's really quite a light pink coloration. I'll try to bring it closer to the camera if I can. But it's a really nice shade. It really works well with a lot of the blues and purples. And it's a newer introduction, but it's very vivid. And again, with a little bit of a cutback in the summer, second set of flowers for you later in the season. A tried and true favorite is Blue Hill. This is a great combination with Pink Dawn, by the way. This is about the bluest of them. A little bit smaller flower. Again, very vigorous plant, growing to about 24 inches tall with real tight flower heads to it. This is secretly my favorite. This is one called, Azure Snow. There's one called Blue Crystal, which is nice as well. But this is a two-tone. You can see the white petals as well as the blue petals. I think this is a really exciting salvia, and again, a proven winter introduction. 2 weeks ago, we featured Salvia caridana on the farm truck. I saw Jennifer's presentation on that. And this is the darkest purple with almost a black stem to it. This is a little bit taller variety, clearly getting to that 24-inch category. Really nice rebloomer, but the stems, even if you just leave the faded flower calyxes on, are really quite showy later in the season. So this is a very nice one. Salvia is also very good for pollinators and insect resistant as well, or rabbit and deer resistant as well. And then this is May Night, which is an oldie but goodie. This is a bigger, looser flower, bigger leaf, but a very nice hardy perennial, easy to grow, easy. Salvia is super easy to grow. I'd like to point out, that's one grown at our farm. Right there, you can look for this container in the perennial section for the plants that we're growing ourselves. So we try to grow a bigger, better version for you, our customers, as opposed to just whatever is available on the market. So I hope you take advantage of Salvia time of the year, as that is sort of the name of the game right there. I just got a question in from Susan, who asked, have just pruned clematis Dr. Ruppel that I bought from the store. Will it rebloom? Also, what perennials could I plant now that will flower the rest of the summer? I have a lot of salvia. Salvia is a good choice. So that's a good one there. Let me address the clematis, the question. So, given that you pruned it this early, there's a chance that you're going to get reblooms on it. Dr. Ruppel is an older cultivar, so I don't know that it's going to have a strong rebloom, but you could see some flowers later in midsummer, towards the late end of summer. But it's not going to be nearly as showy as the first flush of flowers, and that's not true of all clematis, but it's certainly true of the older cultivars for sure. As far as what perennials bloom the rest of summer, so June is really perennial month. So this is the best selection of perennials happens in June and early July. This is when most of the perennials are hitting their stride. So though you were in shopping in May because everybody's got the bug to get out and garden, June is perennial month. So hopefully you can enjoy that perennial palooza, if you will, out in the gardens from now to the end of the month or early July. There's not a lot of heavy reblooming perennials. So the name of the game in my mind is staggering your flowers so you don't get everything at once. The next thing to come into its own will be a leucanthemum, the daisies. Shasta daisy will be coming in to its bloom. If you want something more purple, liatris is got a long bloom period as well. A lot of campanella, bellflowers will be blooming, and those will sporadically keep blooming through like a 6-week or maybe even 8-week window. So those are sort of the high points. There's certainly a lot out there, and I don't want to mislead you by saying, oh, it's just endless. But the name of the game is, in my mind, staggering your blooms. So not everything is happening at once. And you can enjoy your flowers at the beginning of June, mid-June, late June, early July, and so on, so that you can keep flowers going on in the garden throughout. Important, as you point out, you pruned back the clematis to get the rebloom. A lot of perennials will put on some secondary flowers if you get to it soon enough. Leucanthemum will, liatris won't. For the most part, you could get some secondary flowers, but delphinium will put on secondary flushes of flowers. Again, they're not stupendous, but they'll keep blooming. So stay up vigilant on your deadheading and remove the dead flowers because you can get some additional rebloom. Also important, again, June is a very good gardening month. A lot of people dismiss June as not being such a great gardening month, like everything's got to be in by Memorial Day or Mother's Day. That's not especially true. There's a lot of gardening windows still open. And in perennials especially, like I said, this is really the best month for it. It's really the best month for roses as well. So it's a lot of plants to choose from. We're still getting fresh shipments multiple times a week at this point. So, take advantage of the perennial season, which is just starting right now. Okay, I've got a question previous that was emailed to us. The question is that the person has hydrangeas with brown stems and no leaves. The plants are growing from the base. Should they cut down those brown stems? So there's a lot of hydrangeas out there, and it's hard to know the exact answer without knowing the exact type of hydrangea. But my guess is that this hydrangea is a macrophylla hydrangea, one of the big blue or pink showy hydrangeas. A lot of those cultivars in that species, honestly, can have some twig dieback during the winter. Older cultivars bloomed only off of old wood, so you would get this great shrub, but no flowers on it. But newer cultivars will bloom off of new wood as well as old wood. So my quick answer is yes, cut back the dead stems to the ground or to the lowest healthy, viable bud where there's some growth coming off of there. If the plant does not bloom for you, by the way, you should probably also give it a dose of fertilizer at this point. Rose tone is a good one for those reblooming hydrangeas. Once a month, May and June, July, maybe August, to get those additional flowers. Give it a dose of fertilizer, cut back the dead stems and monitor it. If it doesn't rebloom, maybe it's an older variety that should be replaced with a newer, better cultivar. The best cultivars that we have for those reblooming macrophylla hydrangeas are Bloomstruck, Endless Summer Bloomstruck, which has got a good sort of baseball sized flower, maybe up to a softball sized flower. And then there's a sister plant to that that's called Summer Crush with a slightly bigger flower. Bloomstruck tends to want to be more purple and blue, but if our soil is alkaline, as in most of our gardens, it'll be more of a pink or rose color. Summer Crush wants to be red or pink naturally, and so it really thrives in our soil conditions. If you want to try to make it bluer, you can do that, but I understand the color isn't great as a purple, so it's actually better as a red or a pink. Twist and Shout is a very good, Endless Summer Twist and Shout is a good good rebloomer as well. And from the Proven Winter line, Tough Stuff Red and Tiny Tough Stuff, those are great rebloomers as well. Those are more lace cap type flowers. I'll have another question. Again, if you have questions, if you're just joining in or just catching what's going on, feel free to email or send a question to us online while the program's going on, or you can email just general questions to hello@chaletnursery.com, and we'll help you at that point. So another question got emailed to me is about an underplanting. The gardener has a weeping white spruce, and she's got sedum planted underneath it. The needles sometimes sit on the sedum leaves. It appears that they're slower growing on the site. Does the soil need to be amended? I thought sedum was tolerant of less than ideal conditions. Well, that's an interesting question. So there's a couple things going on, and so I'm going to shoot at some answers, and hopefully we get to a closer solution. Sedum is very tolerant of terrible conditions, horrible conditions. The two conditions it is not suited for is shade and not suited for wet conditions. So if you've got a sprinkler system on the sedum, that could slow its growth down and make it pretty weak. If it's only getting morning sun, or if the plant above it is significantly larger, it blocks some of the sunlight, that will impact its growing habit as well. So again, sedum is very versatile. It likes terrible conditions. The worst soil you can find, the driest soil you can find, the sunniest spot you can find. That's where it thrives. But the soil type doesn't matter that much. Like a clay soil, sandy soil, it really is very forgiving. Acidic soil, alkaline soil, very forgiving. If it's super alkaline, that could be a problem, but it's unlikely to be that soil condition in most of our typical garden locations. So I would monitor, what I would look for solving this is how much sun the plant is actually getting. Ideally, it wants 6 to 8 hours or more of sunlight a day. So try to eliminate overhead branching, maybe move the plant slightly forward away from the other plants so it gets more sunlight. Additionally, check to see how much water it gets. If it's getting watered more than once a week, it's probably getting too much water. So likes it on the dry side. And if the landscape is mature at this point in the season, even with this recent dry spell, we hardly need much additional water. Again, it's going to vary by site, but most of our gardens, most of our mature established gardens, plants that have been in the ground for 2 or 3 years or more, probably don't need that much water this early in the season. The nighttime temperatures are still pretty cool. The daytime temperatures have not been extremely hot, again, sporadically. You know, your annuals will need quite a bit more water. Your containers will need quite a bit more water, but the perennials, trees and shrubs in the ground, they won't need that much moisture as well. All right. All right, we're clipping right along. I've got another question that was sent to us. Again, it's an evergreen question, so I'm glad to feel it. What do pine and spruce needles do to the soil, good or bad? Good, 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 good. They're probably the best soil amendment we really can get for most of our gardens. However, because they're prickly, they're dry, they're not super conducive to using in the soil. Evergreen needles provide some acidity to the soil. They also add organic material to the soil, and they actually will help with moisture retention. I worked down south for a number of years in Louisiana, and they sold bales of pine needles, and they use it as a thick mulch because it was so great for the soil. It's too expensive to ship because it takes up a lot of space, but there's not a lot of weight to it. So we don't see it up north that often. It's great soil amendment though. If you can put a thick layer on and turn it as it composts, really helps with the soil composition. Again, it helps with moisture retention, weed control, adds acidity to the soil. We all need more acidity in the soil. No matter how much you think you put on, we could use more. And the plants love it. So so as far as the spruce needles falling, great. I would try to work them into the ground so they're not just sitting as a thick layer on the surface. You could also relocate them to your compost pile and work them in there. That's great. If you've got a vegetable garden, that's a great addition. Put it on in the fall of the year, rototill it in, and then in the spring be able to plant right into it. It's a great thing. I've got an online question. And we'll go to. I used Bio Advanced Rose and Flower 3-in-1 product for crab apple tree rust on 5/15 as directed. I see rust on the leaves. What should I do? All right. So with those specific chemical questions, I don't have all the answers at the tip of my tongue. I don't know all those products. So feel free to stop into the store, visit with us at the info center downstairs. Right by the gardens, the office there. They should be able to give you some pointers. Or email us at hello@chaletnursery.com for some specifics. But I'll touch on what I think part of the answer is there. I think that the problem with any of the directions, and I say this carefully, is that they give you a general direction, but they're giving you a direction for the entire country. And I think that the 5/15 date might be a little bit late in my mind. And probably I would have liked to see that maybe a little bit earlier. Not a lot earlier. I'm not saying put it on in April, but maybe the first of May. The other thing that could happen, and by the way, the calendar is a great way for us to trigger a response, but every year is a little bit different. This year's spring was actually a little bit early. So the dates have to slide a little bit with that. The other thing, those products that are used, and I don't know whether this is a spray-on product or a dry product. If it's a spray-on product, there could be a recommendation for a follow-up application. That's not uncommon. It's not uncommon for it to be 2 or 3 applications sequentially in like 14-day intervals. Again, I'm not familiar with that product intimately, so I don't know the label. It's always a good idea to double check, even when somebody authoritatively tells you a product, check the label. Always be sure to do that. But it's not uncommon to need a second or third application. The other part of that is it's possible that if you had a bad infestation in previous year or couple years running, that you may see a diminishing of the rust this year, and it may take a couple seasons to get complete control over it. So again, I don't have a solid like definitive answer, but that's where I'm leaning toward in the solution. But definitely, send us an email at hello@chaletnursery.com or drop into the store and see one of our experts at the information center. I have another question. Great. I'm loving the questions. Thank you for sending them. A person says, it's Kathy, says that they're a new peony grower. Should we deadhead peonies, or is the leftover head worthy for the birds of beauty, etc.? No, I would deadhead for sure. These are, there is a seed sometimes that can get set, but it's a big seed, so it's not really a wildlife attractant. What I would do is I would cut it back like 2 or 3 leaf petioles off of the stem, cut it back to that so it's more of a body, so it looks more like a bush, and it'll stand and look really great into the summer. Peonies can sometimes get powdery mildew or some bacterial leaf spot. If it doesn't necessarily warrant treating it, depends on how important the plant is and the environmental factors around it go. If the disease is really bad, you can cut it back early, but I would let it stay for as long as you can, because it's setting up energy for next year's flower production. Otherwise, you can treat it with a general purpose fungicide if the diseases show up. But they're mostly cosmetic and they don't usually harm the plant permanently. So it's not something that's life or death for the peony. So Kathy also asked another question. How do we fertilize containers of annuals all filled in and thriving? So it's already growing and filling in. Is there a product that's good to use as we water the plant to get the soil to dig something that is not, so it doesn't want to work it into the soil? Absolutely. Water soluble fertilizers are really great for containers. You can mix them into your watering can. That's what I do. Mix it in your watering can, apply it once a week, every 10 or 14 days at the long end. Apply it on the foliage and wet the soil as well. The water-soluble fertilizers are absorbed quickly through the foliage, so it'll impact the plants and produce more, help boost some flowers right away. I like to always remind people that plants can't read, so it's up to us to do all the reading part. On every fertilizer package, there are 3 numbers. The first number is nitrogen for leaf production. The second number is phosphorus for flowers and roots. The third number is potassium. That's stems, fruits, overall vigor of the plant, generally speaking. So the middle number should be the highest. Doesn't matter what it says really on the front. It could say for geraniums, or it could say for perennials or roses or whatever. But as long as that middle number is the highest number, you can use that for your annuals for flower production. So whatever brand you prefer, but look for the middle number to be the highest number on the fertilizer package. Apply it every 10 days is ideal. Once a week's okay. Once every 14 days is okay. But mix it with water on the foliage of the plant. It's fine. It's not going to burn it. Try not to do it on the hottest day at the hottest time of the day. I usually do mine in the late afternoon. There's still a couple hours for it to dry before nighttime, or I'll do it in the morning so it dries before the hottest part of the day. But it's a great thing. My mother, I tell the story all the time. My mother was very envious of the neighbors across the street. They always had beautiful flowers, and she did not have beautiful flowers. And she said, "Kevin, what can I do?" And I said, "Mom, every Sunday before you go to bingo, mix some water-soluble fertilizer, put it on them every week, and you'll have beautiful flowers. Trust me, I do this. This is the thing I do." She did that, and she became a gardener. Well, not really, but she had more beautiful annuals than she'd ever had before. So it's really about the fertilizer. And again, water soluble, if you don't want to get in there. Water soluble fertilizers are, can be kind of strong. So you do want to be careful not to double or triple strength them or anything, but you use them as directed every 7-10 days. You should have really good results out of it without having to dig in the soil. Soil applied fertilizers take longer to break down, get into the root, up to the stem, into the plant for flower production. Water solubles go right into the leaf. They're in the plant sort of fast, and so you get a quicker result out of those. So if you're having some issues, you really want to turn it around fast, water soluble is a really good application to go for. Thank you for those questions. But again, if you got more questions, feel free to throw them my way. I'm glad to help out with trying to answer those. We still got about 30 minutes. If you got questions, I'm glad to try to answer them. So I've got a question here that was emailed earlier. This person says, my Wisconsin relatives, 2 hours north of here, provide no special care to their gorgeous tree peony and other large bushes and perennials. Why do I have to fertilize, fight pests, and amend the soil so much as if all of our plants are higher maintenance? Aha, interesting thing. So I relocated to the area recently, but I live in Kenosha, so I'm a Wisconsinite technically. So there's a couple things, and one thing that that is really an interesting cultural event is the Chicagoland area has such a high population, and here's where, if you squint your eyes and you think about this, it impacts our gardening. We have a lot more pests moving through our area because of the amount of traffic through our area, commuting or whatever. And strangely enough, you are bringing insects when you're driving through from point A to point B. They get swept along in the airstream of the cars. They get swept along in bringing plants back and forth. So people are buying plants at point A and bringing them in. So you have actually, as weird as it is, we're bringing more insects into our environment that way. Because there's also a higher population, there's actually also more stress on the plants. There's more air pollution, there's more compaction in the soil because we have a lot more traffic and interaction. We also are going to have some ambient heat due to population center. So the buildings, the automobiles, the more concrete. So those things are all environmental factors that by themselves may not cause stress on the plants, but as they compound, a couple weeks of dry, a little bit of hot, you got the building reflecting heat, you got extra air pollution. These things incrementally cause stress on the plant, and eventually you get to a point where the insects decide to enact. What's the solution? Well, the solution is, again, doing environmental things. So making sure that your mulch layer is thick and freshened every once in a while so that the moisture stays put. That you clean out infected areas. So if you do have an insect or disease problem, you either treat it or physically remove the pests, clean up the debris from a diseased leaves or that sort of thing, to lessen the impact of those things. Water in the mornings so that it keeps the plant cool and out of stress during the heat of the day. That's important. So those little environmental tricks are really good for helping the plant's overall vigor. And then lastly, and again, I sort of touched on this with the annual question earlier, the bare minimum thing that we should all kind of engage in is an organic fertilizer or a fertilizing program, generally speaking, because the healthier the plant, the more resistant it'll be to insect and disease problems, the better the root system will be so they can fight off drought issues, that sort of thing. So, you know, if you haven't done a fertilization yet, it's not too late. There are easy organic flower tone or rose tone or holly tone for your more substantial plants. Fish emulsion is a good liquid fertilizer that's organic. General purpose fertilizers, chemical fertilizers, if that's more your speed. But fertilizing those plants, key to success. It builds a healthy plant is more resistant to everything. So so to answer that question, my basic suggestion is monitor the environmental factors you can, water, other stresses, and then start a good fertilizing program so that you end up with a healthier plant overall. I've got a question online. Thank you. Looks like Ellen. Sorry, I didn't bring my reading glasses. Best way to harvest lettuce, which might be butter lettuce. Okay, so leaf lettuce. So leaf lettuce is a great all-season harvest. We used to think that we should pull a lettuce out and then cut it and use the whole plant. Now, really, honestly, the best thing to do is cut crop. So take a section or a few plants, cut them to the base. Leave maybe a half an inch, quarter inch, half inch, maybe a little more than that of the plant, and it will regenerate new leaves, and you can reharvest those leaf lettuces right from the second flush of growth. If you don't have that many plants, if you can't do that, the best thing to do is cut and then put another layer of seed in real quick, because there's time enough to get an early summer crop of leaf lettuce as well. So don't be shy about replanting at this point. You know, June, again, I said this sort of earlier, June is a great gardening month. We underestimate the things we can still get done in June and get great results in the garden. Leaf lettuces and early harvest vegetables, really you can still be working on this early in June. You know, in a week or 2 weeks, maybe not so much, but you know, this is a great time to get in and still do a lot of regrowth. I think there's a follow-up to that. Won't it be too hot for leaf lettuce? No, because you can harvest them really short. So if you're not, yeah, you're not going to get the big, you know, like 10 or 12 inch leaves off of it, but you can get like when you go to the grocery store and you see baby greens, it's still plenty of time for that to happen. It's pushing it. It's not great, and you're not going to get, again, the big giant leaves off of it. But you can do that. And again, do it again in the fall. At the end of August or early September, boom, another set of leaf lettuce in, and you can get another harvest out of that. Again, these aren't going to be giant, you know, romaine heads or big collections like that, but you can still get really good vegetables out of the season. Again, you're pushing it. Don't wait 2 weeks. Do it this weekend. It's going to be in the 60s. What else is there to do? Get out in the garden, man. It's great. Another question just came on. Kathy sends a question. I have broccoli plants growing nicely in a big pot with large leaves and little florets, protected behind plastic screening. Now the plants are more mature and producing, will critters no longer dig the soil, thicker stems? Can I remove the fencing? So I'm always a little skeptical, because again, every environment's a little bit different. Yes, as a more mature plant, they're not going to be as prone to being picked on. If it's unsightly, you know, the answer is really hard, you know, because it's a personal preference sort of thing. If it was my druthers, if I had a big critter problem in my area, I would probably not remove it fully. You know, I'd probably consider what I could do to change the look of it, or change the way that the fencing is applied. I have a friend who uses willow twigs, and he just puts them really close together to create a fencing that's more natural looking, to help prevent the critters, as opposed to a formal metal wire fence. If your problem is slight, like you don't seem to have a lot of other critter damage, you could do it and probably not have problems. I'm going to reach over the table because I brought a prop for another question, but it relates to Kathy's question, but it's just out of reach. I apologize. Sorry. All right. Okay, sorry everybody. So this is a good rodent repellent. So for those critters, this is an organic product. This is called Rat Magic. It's a new product. I'm actually not super familiar with it, but Jennifer likes it a lot. It is all derived organically. It's herb oils, castor oil, a couple things. It's probably not great for right on top of your vegetable areas, but it's really great as a perimeter around them. So go out into the grass right around the vegetable garden and use it there so it doesn't impact your vegetables directly. But this Rat Magic is organic, so it's safe to use for you. It's not going to add any contaminations to your soil or cause any problems that way. Also won't kill the animals, so it's not a harmful thing to your local animal population, but it'll help keep them away from the area. Again, follow the directions, but apply it around the perimeter of your garden area, and that'll help keep some of those critters out. Which will, Kathy's question and the rat magic will lead me to another question. The customer says that rabbit ate all of her dill, and now the plant is very leggy. And is there anything that she can do to make it healthier and better? Dill is kind of short season, so I don't think that you're going to have much luck with getting that to bush back out. Fertilize it. You could probably get some more foliage off of it, which you then could harvest quickly and be able to enjoy as a fresh herb. You could start, it's again, in that same vein as leaf lettuces. You could start some seed right away and get some short dill if you want some for summer usage before it bolts. But again, dill I would reseed that in the late summer to get some fall time on it. We did get some fresh herbs delivered, herb plants delivered to the store for this weekend. I don't know that there's dill, but again, if you want to email a question to hello@chaleznursery.com, they can try to solve that for you, find out if we do have any available for replanting. Kathy, thank you, Kathy. You're my biggest fan. Thank you for the questions. Why are the radish starting to flower, bolt, and the radish itself is so small? Every year is a somewhat different year, so it's hard to judge that. My guess is that because our weather has been a little erratic, it's been a little cooler than normal, but erratic. That it hasn't put a lot of energy. It's also, I know I said earlier that you don't have to water a lot for mature gardens, but radish may not also, with the dry spell, may not have plumped up as much as it ought to. What I would do is bend back the flower stalks, give it some healthy water. I know we've gotten some rain recently. And see if that doesn't give you a little bit more oomph in your radish. I know it's not a lot of time, but it'll buy you a week or so, and maybe it'll get you a little more substance to those. I am not a radish eater. I tell people all the time I know how to grow them. I don't know what they're supposed to be like. So shame on me, I guess, for never eating a radish. Water is sort of when your vegetables don't bulk up as much as they ought to, water is often the root cause of that problem. So I would think that weather patterns a little erratic, maybe not as much water as it really wants, and it could go. But there's plenty of time, again, in the fall for you to reseed some radish in and get another batch for late in the season. Susan, thank you for peppering it up and giving me a new question. When is the best time to feed asparagus, in the spring or after they've finished, or both? The answer is both. You don't need a lot of top growth on asparagus, and it certainly is a pretty aggressive grower once it's established. But twice a year fertilizing, once in the spring, once in the fall, is certainly not out of the question. So that's probably the way I would target it. You don't want to put a lot of nitrogen into it because it'll send it'll clump up and be kind of large. But if you got space for it, a general purpose fertilizer is a good way to go. Again, just personally, I'd probably aim towards an organic fertilizer like flower tone or tomato tone or one of the tones. I'm a big Espoma fertilizer fan. So one of those should help out with asparagus twice a year is probably the way that I would go with that. Shirley asks a question, which is a tricky one to answer. She asks, how do you rejuvenate an old shrub? Should you cut it down all the way to the ground or by half or what have you? So that's a specific question that I would encourage you to write in and get a more defined answer, but I'll give you some generals. So if it's it's a fast growing shrub, it's a deciduous shrub with a lot of thin stems, grows very rapidly. You could really cut that down all the way. Though I would probably wait and do that in the fall of the year as opposed to the spring of the year or summer of the year. That's a lot of stress on the plant. There are a number of plants that really should be cut back, if not every year, every couple years. Most summer flowering spirea, potentilla, most red twig dogwoods, though on red twig dogwoods, I would cut them back dormant in the spring of the year, so March, end of March or so, so that you can enjoy the red twigs. Rose of Sharon can be cut back hard in the fall or during the dormant season of the year. Those plants all benefit. A lot of hydrangeas, a lot of paniculata, Annabelle, smooth hydrangeas. Those benefit from cutbacks periodically to give them a bigger boost. Other plants are really difficult to cut back that way. A lot of viburnums are very tricky as a cutback. You have to be very careful. Evergreens, very difficult to do. The best solution for a really big plant is to cut back in stages. Like let's say I've got a big old-fashioned lilac. After it's done blooming, I don't want to have a year that I don't get any flowers, right? I want to enjoy that. So after the flowers are still with some color on them, but are fading, I'd cut the plant back maybe by a quarter or a third, then leave it alone, let it set its buds for next year. They'll be lower and more enjoyable. And then the next year, so 2021 now, I would do the same thing and I'd cut it back again, maybe another third of the way. So now it's shorter than it was the year before. And then maybe the third year, do it again so that it's more manageable and you can get better control over the plant. So there are plants that you could do in stages because you don't want to miss a year of flowers or risk the chance of losing it. But if you've got a specific question about your specific shrub, take some pictures of the foliage, take pictures of the overall plant, email those with your question to hello@chaleznursery.com, or bring those pictures into the store, to the information center down by the nursery gardens office, and they can help you out with the specific answers to that specific shrub's specific needs for cutting it back and getting rejuvenation out of it. So I hope I touched on that for you. I got one more question that was emailed in earlier, but it's not too late for you to send in some questions. We still got another 10 minutes or so that I'll be working my way through. So thank you again. So Gardner emailed in and asked, they've got Pachysandra that is either leggy or floppy, and they ask, should they just cover the long stems with dirt, or what should they do about that? Pachysandra is a great, interesting creature. It's related to boxwood. A lot of people don't realize that. It's very versatile. It's very easy grower. So in the fall of the year, not too late fall, but let's say the beginning of September or so, you can cut back your Pachysandra, not hard. You don't want to cut it to nubs, but you can cut it back a bit. And it'll branch out and thicken up in the spring of the year. You could do that in the spring of the year if it's early enough. We're touching on a little bit late for me feeling super comfortable with that. But you know, if you get in there, keep it well watered, give it a cut back. Again, leave 5-6 inches of stem, maybe. Cut it back. Give it a dose of high nitrogen fertilizer. Maybe with a little acidity to it, something that will give it a boost of growth. It'll thicken in and do really nicely. If you've just got a few plants, yes, you can lay them down, put some soil on top of them, they'll root and send up new Pachysandra. It'll be great, it'll fill in for you. If it's early enough and you're bored and you know, because there's nothing else to do, you could root the Pachysandra really easily. You could cut it, put it in 6-inch pots with moist soil. They root very easily, so you grow yourself a whole bunch of plants, fill them in the garden. So you know, there's a couple answers in there. So you know, cutting it back is not out of the question. I used to recommend, and this gets tricky, because you can do this with Pachysandra if you're if you're handy enough. If you set your lawnmower to the highest setting, or you use a string trimmer, you can also use those tools to prune your Pachysandra bed. But you have to be careful about the timing of that, because that'll force them to branch out and thicken up for you. But early in the season, later in the season are probably the best times. So Kathy emails a question. Yay, Kathy. My white flower anemone is blooming now. Okay. How hard did Dad had to cut back to keep it looking tidy? It's not hard, but it's a time consuming. That's what I tell people all the time. It's whether you have the patience to do, individual flowers, or if you just want to cut the whole plant back. It's not very hard. You honestly, I would find pruners to slow me down. What I would do is I would just literally just break the stems, the petiole, the flower stem, the petiole of the flower. Just pick those right off as low to the foliage as you can. It's not really going to harm the plant, even if you give it a wrong tug or pull off a couple leaves with it. It's not detrimental to the plant. What I would probably try to do is then follow it up with a fertilizer, again, a general purpose fertilizer on that. Anemone, spring flowering anemone has been known to occasionally shoot out some late summer flowers if you deadhead soon enough. Again, it's not going to be outstanding. If you get 3 flowers, you might be amazed, but it may send a couple extra flowers out late in the season. But deadheading them certainly will keep any volunteer seeds from happening, which is important. Sometimes you don't want to be overwhelmed with a single variety of plants spreading throughout the garden. But hard it is not. And again, beautiful weekend for this. This is the best June weekend for gardening that you can imagine. So get out there and give those a couple nips. Shirley asks, with leggy Pachysandra, can you just cover over the legs with dirt? Yep. You can do that too. It'll layer. That's called layering. And so the soil will sit on top of there and it'll root in, and it will do that just fine. So yes, that is a solution. If you don't want to cut, you can certainly just add some soil to it. If they resist wanting to touch the soil, that's where the cutting may have to come in. But if you can get them to make contact with the soil, they'll root and they'll fill in. So that's exactly where I was going, Shirley, is you can add some soil, layer the plant, and it'll root in and be fine. Or you can do the cutting. So either way on that. The only advantage to cutting in my mind is that because it will branch the plant, whereas layering gives you more plants, but not necessarily better branched plants. And we don't think of Pachysandra as a branching plant, but it will. It'll create multiple leaders, and so you end up with a fuller plant per plant than more plants. All right. Well, I'm going to let you in on another real quick secret. We only have a few minutes. This weekend, we are doing a virtual farm truck. So we're bringing plants fresh from our Salem, Wisconsin farm to the store for an online sales event. So make sure to check that out. It's going to be from noon till 3 o'clock tomorrow online. I was looking over the list, and one of the plants that's going to be on there is a salvia called Snow Hill. I didn't bring Snow Hill with me. It's a white flowering salvia. It really is an accent to any salvia garden or salvia collection. Really adds a little oomph because the white really stands out really nicely against the darker purples or blues. So look for that one. That's a great one. We also have a late blooming pink flowering dogwood tree. It's a lower growing dogwood called Scarlet Fire. It's got a great red or pink flower. It's relatively small plant. I think it's a 5-gallon pot is what those will be in. So you're looking at maybe 4 foot to start with or so. But it's a great accent for part shade or even a sunny garden. But it'll give you the later season, early June, mid-June flower. So it's a great accent. And of course, a favorite for most of our gardens, perennial gardens right now, is Walker's Low Catmint, which is a more compact form of catmint. Catmint's in the same family as Salvia, and it's got a blue flower. It's a low-growing 12 to 15 inches or so, maybe a 15-inch spread, 18-inch spread, nice mounded plant. Very resistant to insects and diseases. Cut it back, it'll reflush with some flowers for you, or at least put on some nice healthy growth. The scent in the leaves of catmint as well as salvia, natural insect repellents, so it helps keep them out of mosquitoes out of the garden, help prevent other insects from wanting to come around. So make sure to avail yourself of those special prices. Again, it's going to be tomorrow from noon till 3. It's going to be an online event, so check us out. I think it's I see it right there, chaletnursery.com/farm truck. Okay, so make sure to check that out. Thank you for coming and joining me today. I appreciate it. I hope you all enjoyed what you learned today. I appreciate being Chalet's 3rd favorite horticulturist. So, keep giving me thumbs up. I'll show up every 2 months or so. It'll be great. Don't forget, if you do have questions and didn't touch on them today, you can email them at hello@chaletnursery.com, and it'll reach one of our specialists here at the store, and they'll be able to answer that question for you, or drop in. Don't forget, June is perennial month. You're going to get the best selection of perennials you see all year now. So avail yourself of that. Come visit us this week, next week. If you're a weekend gardener, this weekend is going to be outstanding. If you join us during the week, come visit us on a Wednesday or Thursday and see what's coming in fresh off the trucks. So, all right. Thanks, everybody. I enjoyed answering your questions today. And we'll see you, for me in about 6 or 8 weeks, because I'm the 3rd favorite. But you'll see probably Tony or Jennifer sooner than that. Okay, thanks. Talk to you all soon.